Today I have the pleasure of speaking with DJ, the money coach. How you doing, DJ?
I'm doing good, Warren. It's a pleasure to be on your program, sir.
Well, I'm so thankful for you. This is going to be a really fun ride, and you've done so much and built so much, and now you're physically building something. So it's gonna be a blast. So I appreciate the time. So first of all, tell me about DJ, the money coach.
Oh, absolutely. So, just to give you a little backdrop, um, went to school, starting out from college. I actually went to go play baseball at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. I'm a Chicagoan, born and raised, and just like most middle class Americans, grew up, went to a private Catholic, elementary school. I was an altar boy. Went to a
Hmm.
Catholic high school, and at that point, right before I went to high school, my mom and dad got divorced. Round about, I was in about the third or fourth grade, as I remember. I have an older sister, so we went from solid professional middle class, had everything, two-car, in the driveway. This is back in, the 70s, late
Right.
70s. And
Right.
and we went from, private school. My dad had a boat. He was a fisherman. He owned horses, all of that good stuff. And we went to become a single family household. And my mom, never complained. So my mom went from being a stay-at-home mom to having to go out and work. And we went from living in a nice, house with cars and boats to actually moving into a very seedy community with my mom and my older sister. And I remember this vividly because I was like, it was almost like overnight. Went from having, vacations to living in what my mom tells me was a two-bedroom apartment, Warren, but I only remember a one-bedroom apartment with my mother and my sister and a radiator and being cold, and
Oh,
literally had rats and roaches. It was that bad.
oh
But
my God.
my mother never complained. My mom went out and became a nurse, and she worked two jobs. And thanks to my grandmother, we stayed in the private Catholic school that my sister and I went to. And at that point, I realized, I said, wow, man, what happened? First, how children are from divorced families at a young age, you thought it was your fault. But when you got older, you realized that you had nothing to do with it. And I
Yeah.
realized at that point how important money was. And then I fast forward. I was blessed. I'm a small guy. I'm about 5'6", but I had a lot of intellect, had a chance to, make a double in elementary school, and was very gifted as an athlete as well. So I played three sports in high school. So I played baseball. I was pretty much an all-state baseball player. I was on the bowling team, won the only championship for my high school in the state of Illinois. And believe it or not, I actually played a little bit of football, and I even made the swim team. So I basically do it, and I was a straight A student. So the school I went to was named Leo High School, and they had a program with Princeton University. So when I was at Leo, I was the fifth rated person in my class, and I was fast tracked to go to Princeton. But then I made up my mind that I didn't like going to all boys school, which I use as an excuse because I didn't like the discipline, to be honest with you. So there was another school called Kenwood Academy, which was rated higher, very affluent, the government officials, very wealthy people, children went there. So I wanted to go to that school, and they had the most beautiful girls that I could ever imagine seeing, Warren. So I convinced my mother that I needed to go to that school. And she said, okay, tell you what. She said, if you're going to go to this school and it's a far away from our home, if you don't like it, you're going to stay. And lo
Mm.
and behold, about a semester into my junior high school, I realized I made a big mistake. So I tried to come back to my mother and I tried to talk to her. I said, hey, I want to go back to Leo. And my mother said, hey, not going to happen. I said, well, I'll even work to pay for it. She said, no, you got to learn your lesson. So as we fast forward, my mom finally got married again. She's still married to her same husband, like 42 years.
Wow.
And we moved back into, professional middle class into the suburbs of Chicago when I was a sophomore in college. And when I was a sophomore in college, I had to sign for Pell Grants and things of that nature, right? So I went to
Sure.
school at 17, and I didn't know at the time that I signed my name. Well, my mom signed my name to a couple of loans that legally, as a minor, I wasn't obligated. So I really didn't think anything about it. So the reason why I'm telling this story, Warren, is that it's real simple. As I went through college, I started signing up for credit cards and stuff just to be able to pay my way, help my mom out, and I also used the money to party. Let's just be
Yeah,
honest, okay?
sure.
As I'm at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, I'm playing baseball, I'm bowling, and I'm going to this pub called the Library. It was literally called the Library.
Nice.
So I'm staying in an athletic dorm, which athletes and our claim to fame was you made it through the first full year without getting kicked out. You were doing awesome. So I made it through the first year and I became a little popular on the campus. And so I had a basketball roommate at the time. His name was Fred, a good guy. So every time my mother would call in my sophomore year, she would say, "Where's DJ at? Oh, he's down at the library." And my
Library.
mother would be excited, right? I'm at the library, but I'm back throwing back some brews and everything else because at that time, Wisconsin, you were able to drink at 19, right?
Yeah.
So, needless to say, I get put on probation in my sophomore year. I don't tell my mother, and
Hmm.
eventually they kick me out of school, right?
Hmm.
So I partied my way out after my sophomore year. My mother finally got the notice. So I come home in the summer and she's like, "Hey, so you're going back to school next year?" I was like, "Well, I'm thinking about, transferring something like this." She said, "Oh, really? You're thinking about transferring from school you just got kicked out of?" And she said, "Guess what?" She said, "You now have 60 days to get your stuff packed and move out of my house."
Oh,
So
wow.
the real life kicked in. So at 19, I went from, again, another major change. I went from being back, professional middle class, mom and new husband helping out whatever expenses I had, taking advantage of things that I shouldn't have. And I
Hmm.
just abused the freedom. And my mother said, "Well, this time we're going to teach you a lesson. You're going to move out and you're going to become a man because if you can take our money, party on it, and not appreciate it, you need to start taking care of yourself." So at that point, I end up not going back to University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. I stopped playing baseball, which was my number one passion, and I
Huh.
actually went and took a job down in Des Plaines, Illinois, to a company called Little Fuse, which was a factory. And in addition to that, I had a job with a company called Sears Technology Services. So Sears Roebuck had their own IT corporation in the suburbs of Chicago in Arlington Heights. So I
Wow.
started working two jobs. And while I was working those jobs, I wasn't going to school, but in the process of one of the jobs, I was a supply clerk and I would always win all the office pools. Pools are real big back then. Any
Uh-huh.
sports pool, I would win all of them, Warren. And so one day, a gentleman named Robbie Robinson, he came up to me. He was a CPA for Sears. And he said, "Hey, man," he said, "you're pretty good at this sports thing. How are you wasting your time here as a supply clerk? You're smarter than that, and you should be doing better." He said, "Why don't you go and get yourself back in college?" And I said, "Well, you know what? I don't know." He said, "Well, you know what? I think you were wasting your time, and I think you would really do yourself a disservice if you continue to work here because without a degree here, no matter how smart you are, they're not going to promote you." And so I kind of listened to him, and I was kind of, you're young, you're full of yourself. I'm making
Yeah.
good money as far as I'm concerned, Warren, because I got two full-time jobs, and I'm
Yeah.
doing okay. Got my own apartment. I got my own, little car. So here's when it kicked in reality for me. I was at the job for 2 years, and all of a sudden I started learning about the computers. And so they had the big mainframes, with the big, mainframes back in the day, the AS400s, things of that nature. So I wanted to get a
Mainframe that would
job.
have the computing power, less computing power than this, right? Like it would take.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So I started learning the program because I was a pretty smart guy. So I started doing more work outside of my responsibilities for the supply clerk. I handled all 900 employee supplies. So when you see those movies and the guys pushing the mail with the manila envelopes, I was
Yep.
that guy, but I was also the guy who had to supply orders. So I
Wow.
was really good in math. So when I did that, I got my job down. And here's why I'm gonna date myself. I was back during the day when it was DOS
Oh
before
yeah.
Windows 3.1 came on.
Yep. I remember
So
DOS.
yeah, so I learned Windows, I converted everything and I started doing the orders and I started getting into the computer department and I said, "Man, I want to be promoting computer department because you're giving me the job, but you're not giving me the pay." So
Yes.
one of the bosses, his name was Ed White. His niece graduated from college. They gave her the job and they wanted me to train her for the job I was doing in the computer department. And here's the funny part. They were paying her, I remember this like it was yesterday. They were paying her like $32,000. That was a lot of money back in like 1990,
Yep.
1989.
Yep.
And I thought about it, I said, wait a minute, I'm going to train her, but you're paying me $10,000 less. I immediately thought to what Robbie told me. I
Mm,
quit the job on the spot. And
nice.
I enrolled in Columbia, downtown Chicago. I paid my way through college. I came out in 92, and then I started getting a better job. I started working in accounting field, and I
Mm,
had been banking with this bank, tried to get my first home. At that point, I went and filed a mortgage, application, and I had some money saved up because I'm a pretty frugal person. And I got turned down for the loan, Warren, and I was wondering, I said, wonder why I'm getting turned down by the loan. So the guy said, hey, man, your credit is not where it needs to be. And I was kind of disappointed, Warren, but in all honesty, it really didn't discourage me. So I just kept working. And then I became an entrepreneur. I had a dream and I started a cleaning company back in 1996 called White
okay.
Glove Immaculate Services in my hometown. I started canvassing the whole downtown area, the Southern Loop area, knocking on doors, and I paid my rent 6 months in advance. And I sold everything. And I went from 6 months making no money. Within my 7, 8 month, I started making good money in the cleaning business. I created a system. And then about 3 years later, I wanted to get a business loan because I had won some bigger contracts, some commercial
Yep.
contracts. So
Yep.
as I'm going back into the same bank that turned me down for a loan, I fill out the application. And Warren, here's the crazy thing. I think at the time I had close to six figures in the bank.
Wow.
And I sit down with the mortgage, I mean, not the mortgage, but the small business, person to give me approval on the loan, and they decline me. At that point in time, I was devastated because I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand my business is growing, I'm working hard, I'm saving up money, I'm paying my bills. And I asked the guy, I said, well, why are you turning me down? He said, do you know what your credit score is? I said, my credit score? Why does that matter? He said, well, here's the reality, DJ. He said, you got a 525 credit score. And he said, you have $60,000 worth of consumable debt. I said, really? He said, yeah, you got a lot of debt. Then I went back, he said, it shows here you have multiple credit cards open and stuff. So all the time while I was in college, when they
Uh-huh.
would give out the free t-shirts and everything, I was
Yep.
signing up for every credit card that I can get my hands on. So I accumulated about $60,000 worth of consumable debt in conjunction with my personal, student loan debt that I signed for. And at that point, I said, whoa, I can't move forward without this business loan, and all the work that I've done is all for naught. So I used to watch Susie Orman on PBS, Channel 11 in Chicago, and she used to talk about personal finances. And I bought her book called The Road to Wealth, and it's an encyclopedia of financial education. And I read just one chapter in the book, Warren. It was on personal credit. And so
Uh,
from that point in time, a 525 in the analog world, this was before the internet was big. This was about 1997, 98. I did everything that she talked about in the pie with the five structures on how to get your credit. And I took my 525 credit score in 12 months and I raised it up to 700. And then within the next 24 months, I raised my credit score to 800. And within 4 years, I paid off all of my $60,000 worth of debt. I didn't file bankruptcy or anything. So as I fast forward to 2002, I actually got myself completely out of debt. And then 4 years later, I actually got myself to a seven-figure net worth, and I had $250,000 worth of income coming in. And the only reason why I know this, Warren, because I got audited. So
uh,
that's how I became DJ the money coach because I played baseball and then I would start coach little kids in baseball and they would call me Coach DJ. So I said, wow, what a better way to brand myself. I coach baseball, coaching people in financial education. I overcame myself and I started teaching financial education in my church. And I actually found a great program, Focus on the Family, came to my church about 2 years prior, and they tried to teach a elongated financial education program that was like 8, 9 weeks, and only about 15% of the church members made it through the program. So I said,
Uh,
what if I could condense what they're doing, Warren, down to maybe like 2, 3 hours and make it more accessible to the people? I was able to do that. And I created a program called Faith, Love, and Money. I taught it in my church. I started teaching other churches in Chicago. And then I was fortunate enough to start teaching at the YMCA. And it just spawned out to bigger and bigger. So that's the quick, backdrop on how I became DJ the Money Coach.
that's amazing. Okay, so I have a lot of questions. That's a great story. Thank you for that. And one of the things I think is so interesting is you have these big contrasts between being, whatever, middle class, upper middle class, to being poor,
Yes,
and
sir.
those are dramatic, kind of life defining moments. And you did it a couple different times, and it made you who you are and motivated you to do different things. So can I ask you, what about this? What made you decide you wanted to start? You go back to college. What made you decide you wanted to start a cleaning business?
Well, that's a great story. I actually was a janitor during high school. So as
Okay.
my little, part-time job at my high school, I had a janitor position. And then when I actually went to college, I actually got a janitor position in the summer at the
Okay.
University of Chicago. So I learned about, commercial cleaning and then, residential cleaning. But then what really hit me, and this will be ironic too, is that while I started to get myself off the ground and had to get my independence from my mom kicking me out, and around about 1997, 98, I was approached by somebody in Amway and I
Well,
became an Amway distributor. And as an Amway distributor, I met a lady named Mary. She was an office manager, and I met an attorney named Angie Jones, and they both had residential cleaning businesses in the downtown Chicago area, and they both left business manager and attorney, and they were making over 6 figures in the cleaning business. And I went out and started working with them, learned their business. And since I knew systems a little bit better than them and had done cleaning in high school and college, I took their system with their, approval, and I added some tweaks to it, and I created my own commercial cleaning business in downtown Chicago. That's what led me to being in the cleaning business.
so what I love about this is, and I think this is a point that people don't think about nowadays, but having a business, it's not okay. Cleaning, it's not sexy. Repairing autos or HVAC, it's not sexy. But man, oh man, talk about AI proof. Talk about if you can do systems and processes right, how much money you can make. I feel like sometimes, people need to look at the non-sexy businesses because that's where the most opportunity is. Do you agree?
Oh, I agree 100%. And also, too, from a person who hadn't finished their college degree at the time, it was an easy entry point that required no regulatory things of that, just some hard work and some determination. But I took what I learned in corporate America and I extracted that into the entrepreneur way to duplicate a system. And the profit margins are ridiculous because, like you said, Warren, it is very sexy return, but it's not sexy for people who go to college. So, and here's the irony of it. Once I started to figure out where to actually go after the right demographic, professional middle class, what we call them dinks, dual income, no kids,
Yes.
the buppies, of the world. So I had a best friend, him and his wife were engineers, and they stayed in this high rise called the Apple condominiums in downtown Chicago, very upscale community. So I'm trying to figure out how to get in this building and get these cleaning contracts. And I clean their house. They were embarrassed. They was like, no, we can't let you clean our house. And we wouldn't feel right about it. I said, don't feel bad for me. I said, I'll clean toilets, I'll scrub floors. Unless you don't trust me, I said, let me clean your house. So they gave in. They allowed me to clean their house. While I was cleaning their house, you know what I did? I started putting flyers under all the doors. I asked them to give me a referral. And before you know it, Warren, I had about 20, 30 accounts within 24 months in that building. And the profit margins were over 120% because I didn't have an acquisition cost.
Yes. Yeah. So what another great point there. You figured out, you first of all, I love that you captured the systems from corporate and applied those to local businesses. And I feel like, I had the benefit mostly of being able to work in corporate for most of my life. And the thing I didn't realize is a lot of business owners don't actually realize the systems and processes that corporate use. And you might not like it, but it works. So that was
Absolutely.
brilliant.
Absolutely. And you know what? I was just telling two people on my team here in Zanzibar. I said, you know what the best thing about corporate America is resources and systems. I said
Uh-huh.
resources and systems. And I said the one thing that I learned when I was at Sears Technology Services, that was a multi-million-dollar business based on systems, and I was able to take a system inside the supply, field and scale it up and become their order person for all their supplies. And
Yeah.
I just borrowed that and I said, wow, if that works for them and I'm running this department, I can do that for myself.
Yes.
And
That's
as
brilliant.
I came in and out of other businesses, now I did go back into corporate America and work in the accounting field. And I worked for an accounting company on the North Shore of Chicago. And they even would, take our time for our breaks and they would count your time. And it was painstaking. I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to take a 15-second break. They want to know exactly to the nth degree millisecond where I am. And I
Oh,
hated that, Warren. But you know what? I loved it when I took their system and applied it to my next business.
that's brilliant. That is so good. I love that.
So yeah.
Well, so then the other thing I want to capture is you just talked about customer acquisition cost, and I love that you took some, and it's a simple idea to say, hey, look, if I can gain entry into, in this case, this high rise, I can literally take a flyer, which cost me, let's say, a penny back then, and I can spread those around, stick them under doors, and then the other thing I get is a referral. And those two things together are going to bring me more customers with a very low customer acquisition cost and a high margin. And that's how you build a really, really robust business. Like it's
Absolutely. So my cleaning business, within 4 years, I took it to seven figures, and I did almost a third of the Southern Loop in Chicago when they were renovating Soldier Field back in 1998. They redid all of that, and you can ask your partner, who you told me you have your auto mechanic businesses. He'll tell you, he can confirm this. So when Mayor Daley, the second Mayor Daley, became the mayor, and they actually moved Lakeshore Drive over closer to the Lake Michigan itself. That whole corridor from what's called 18th Street to 22nd Street was all gentrified, and I went down there and I canvassed every new condominium townhouse, and I ended up getting majority of those accounts using the systems that I learned, and then had the benefit. And this is what Amway taught me, and a lot of people are down on Amway, but Amway, the business system, they taught me this acronym. It's called FORM, FORM. If you want to engage somebody fastly, ask them about their family sincerely, ask them about their occupation, ask them about their recreation. You and I are both golfers. Ask them about their message or their money and take copious notes on them. Why is it important to me and important to you, Warren, and even people listening to this? Because in one meeting, I went to it was like a banquet. And at this banquet, it was a black tie affair. I got fortunate to sit at a table with a gentleman named Dr. Vilas. He was an Indian doctor. So we're sitting at the table just talking and stuff. I start forming him. Hey, tell me a little bit about your family, Dr. Vilas. He tells me about two of his daughters' names. And long story short, I'm walking downtown Chicago about 4 months later. I see a building that has this Indian name on it in the South Loop across from Grant Park. Guess what? It was his daughter's name. I pull out his card out of my Rolodex. You remember Rolodexes back in the day. I
yeah,
go to my
yeah.
Rolodex. On the back of the card, I have his name of his daughters, what they did, and I'm looking at this building with this Indian name on it. I call him up. I say, hey, Dr. Vilas, how's your daughter so and so doing? He's like, how do you know my daughter? I said, remember we were sitting at the table? I said, how's she doing? Oh, my daughter's doing great. I said, I couldn't help but to notice you just dedicated a building to your daughter in downtown Chicago. He said, yeah, I absolutely did. I said, you know what? I'm in the cleaning business. I said, would I be able to do the post-construction cleaning on your building? He said, DJ, come on in. That's the last thing we do to get our certifications, and we really don't take a lot of time doing it. I ended up getting my first commercial post cleaning contract because I formed Dr. Vilas and it was 450 units. And that spawned me into getting my biggest contract with Ashland Chemical. At the time, Warren, it was the second largest chemical company in the world to 3M. And I grew all of their branches within 3 years just from
Wow.
forming them.
And all that really from one person. And you did it the right way. You took good notes. You remembered him. You followed him. That's amazing because I think the power of networking is something else that people underestimate. Like if you can get that referral, those referrals close it depending on your business at 90 to 100%, right? And a close
Absolutely.
closes at 0.9% or whatever, make up a number, 10%. You know, that's the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And AI will never replace that. One thing I remember that Jim Collins from Good to Great, I'm a studier of businesses as well. So Jim Collins is one of my heroes. He wrote the book Good to Great 1998. In the book, he has one chapter that I focus on outside of servanthood leadership. He talks about the hedgehog concept, chapter 5. So in chapter 5, it says there's a three-legged stool or a triangle. He said, number one, he said, what's your gift or your passion? And this is how you can determine how you can be wealthy across the globe, yet alone in America. He said, determine what your passion or your gift is. He said, number two, find your niche in a market that most times is saturated. Cleaning business, saturated. Every business we go into on this planet, most people don't realize is saturated, but there's always niche. So he said, find the niche. Then he said, the third part of the stool is how do you get people in front of you? What's the economic bus? So one of the reasons why I was excited about getting on your platform, it gives me the ability to tell people my story. And it gives me
Hmm.
the ability to tell them what I'm great at. And this is a economic bus that is a low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. Hop on the bus. I love
So
it.
I transferred from the cleaning business, sold out that business, and I got into the financial education business because I remembered what I had to overcome. And then I saw a show with Barbara Waters, 2020.
Hmm.
I'm watching this show one night, Warren, and she's interviewing doctors, PhDs, lawyers, and they all got hundreds of thousands of dollars of consumable debt. And then a light bulb went off to me. I said, wait a minute, that's not unique to me. This is a middle class American problem. And just because
Yes.
you're a doctor or a lawyer, don't mean you know about money.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's when I started my financial education program.
So I love that you saw this need in the well in the world, but in the United States, let's say for this argument, and then but so when did you like and then you flipped the switch and you said yes, but that takes guts. It takes guts to start a business first of all, but then to have a very successful business, to sell it and to start something totally different. When did you know?
Well,
When did you know? Like,
it's funny. I used to think this was an insult. People would say, "Oh, you're a serial entrepreneur." And when people would call you entrepreneur back in the 90s, that was really saying you're a failure to get a real job. So you're just pretending to be an entrepreneur.
I love that.
So for me, I used to have, what they would call, ADH or whatever it's called, but I would have short tension disorder. So I could
ADHD.
not sit still. And my thing was, Warren, and what I find is to be true with most entrepreneurs, once we accomplish something and we master it, we get bored. So
Hmm.
after I mastered the cleaning business, it was no more attractive to me. Even though it made good money, I didn't grow up wanting to be a cleaner. I
Yeah.
wanted to be a baseball player.
Yes.
Does that make sense? So
Yes.
I needed to find something else to keep me excited, and it wasn't about the money. But the financial education piece, I could see myself doing that forever because I realized it was a problem that everybody has. And so now I knew I always had a great mathematical mind because I always did and excelled well in math. And I had an accounting background. So I said, I don't want to be an accountant. I said, what's the next best thing? Financial education. And
Mm.
when I saw that story on 2020, I said, wait a minute, I know doctors, I know lawyers, I know janitors. I said, I'm pretty sure they probably got the similar challenges. So I got rid of the cleaning business happily. It was very successful. And I said, I'm going to start all over again in the financial education world. And I went and I got myself hired at a company through one of my mentors named Gus Tucker. He had an MBA from the University of Chicago. He got hired by a financial company down in Springfield, Illinois, which is the capital, and they were looking for some go-getters, some people who can open up the Chicagoland market, a small
Mm,
niche company, but didn't have any impact in the city. So they wanted to go after professionals in the city, and I met what they were looking for. So I went
sure.
and got my securities license, and then I start training with them, and we start growing and growing the company. And then I realized, I said, you know what, this is great to be a part of this, but I still want to do my own thing. And so I saw what they couldn't see by them being from rural part of Illinois versus metropolitan Chicago. They
Yeah,
were underestimating what professionals wanted in Chicago versus rural people who live on farms and stuff like that.
sure,
So,
sure.
and they weren't willing to spend the money to get into that market. They just wanted the low hanging fruit. So I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to start my own company, Deransburg International, and I'm going to go into financial education. I waited out the, non-compete stuff and things of that nature. And again, what I did, Warren, I took a proven system that they had, that they trained me, and I applied it here. And again, I had some hardships. See, here's the thing, like you said, a lot of times what people don't understand, for every success that a good entrepreneur like yourself has, you probably had 100, letdowns, 10,
Yeah.
20 setbacks, but nobody wants to hear about that. So I had to go and sell my house, move into a smaller place, and
Wow.
then start over because I needed the resources to pour into a new business.
Hmm.
And I was still single. So I was able to do all of that.
Ah,
And that was the risk. So nobody was willing to give me a chance other than what I had done. But they like, hey, you don't have a financial background. Yeah, you got an accounting, minor degree, but how do you know financial education? Did you work for Merrill Lynch? Did you work for these guys? No, I didn't work for that, but I can tell you I overcame my own financial story. I can tell you I come from professional middle class, so I'm pretty sure I can teach you some things. So I had to have somebody again take a chance on me. Started
mm,
with my church, did my church services for free. Then I did, other churches for practically nothing. So this is like me getting my PhD on my internship. And then the
sure.
word started to get out. And then I started going to these people's home, Warren. And just like Barbara Walters show with the doctors, the lawyers, and PhD, I would go into people's houses. They would have $1 million house. They would have 5 cars in a driveway, but they would have three, four, $500,000 worth of consumable debt. And I'm like, wow, I always thought these people were rich. They were worse off than the janitors that I would sit down with.
Right? They had, when you added it all up and you added up their liabilities versus their, the stuff that had value and their big loans on their houses and their cars, they're actually upside.
Yep, exactly. Upside down. So I was able to take the relationships, and what gave me the big break is when I had the chance to do it for one of the YMCA's. We did such a great job. They introduced us to a couple more YMCA's. And then I moved to Texas. And I moved to Texas around about 2008, 2009, had to start all over, had my new wife, had a couple of young children. And I said, hey, I can take this system, introduce myself to the YMCA, went through a leadership program, Fort Bend County Leadership. And
Okay.
that was a whole year program where every Wednesday, third Wednesday of the month, they took us to every different industry in Fort Bend County. So, Fort Bend County was growing. So I was like, wow, man, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I got systems from good to great. I got systems from Amway. I got systems from my cleaning company. And it's a whole wide open world that all I got to do is be a good person, work hard, and treat people right. And I basically learned everything in that corridor, got fortunate enough to get another contract with the Richmond YMCA, T.W. Davis YMCA, which linked me into the Missouri City YMCA and the Katy YMCA. And I did a great job. They cut videos for me, and we just began to grow.
Amazing. Well, what I like about what you're saying here is that you got to grind. Like, you're going to have to grind and you're going to have to go through the stuff, right? How do you get through the stuff?
Well, thank goodness I had a Proverbs 31 wife. That was the
There
most
you go.
important part. I have to tell you is that you have to have somebody that can be there for you in your low times and still love you, support you, encourage you, and actually have the ability to withstand the ebbs and the flows. And the reality is that at the time, my wife, which I was married to for 20 years, I'm no longer married, but we're still best friends. But here's the thing, what happened? When my companies failed, she stood in the gap. So when the companies were
Nice.
doing well, she didn't have to work anything. But when the companies failed, she didn't look at it as a failure to me. She said, hey, what's next? How much leg time do you need to get back up and go get it? You don't need to go get a job if you don't want to do that. If you really are an entrepreneur, let me support you. And the other
Wow.
thing is, here's what I found because I was strong into my church. So after a period of time, I stumbled on John C. Maxwell. I
Okay.
met John C. Maxwell in like 1999. Again, he came to our church. He had his leadership program. I'm still a member of it. And one thing he taught us, he said, hey, you have to have three, advisors in your life. He said you have to have a spiritual advisor. He said you have to have a leadership advisor, which he is the number one leadership advisor on the planet. Then he said you have to have a business advisor. But he said, here's the most important thing that most people miss the mark on. He said, each one of those people, they have to have far more success than you, and they have to have the principles that you have to emulate. Don't duplicate the personality.
Uh,
That's the key part. So with John C. Maxwell and my pastor, Pastor Don Rackett from Chicagoland Bible Fellowship, here's what he told me. He said, DJ, he said, I want you to do three things. I want you to, when you study the word, I want you to make sure it's meaningful, measurable, and manageable based on your comprehension of the Bible, not what you see from me at the pulpit. Hold me accountable to the principles.
Love
And
it.
he said, if you can do that, then you and I are never going to have a challenge. And that resonated when I had the experience with John C. Maxwell. So, what I decided to do in the Bible, it says, a man who counsels himself is a fool. I was a fool for multiple years. But when I got those two guys come together, Rackett, Pastor Don Rackett from Chicagoland Bible Fellowship, John C. Maxwell, and I got Jim Collins, who I was blessed to meet all of them. That's another gift. Okay.
Yeah.
So I said, here's what I got to do. I got to have these people who are grounded, that if you are a man of God, I can emulate your principal success. How so? Pastor Don Rackett married 40 something years to the same wife, Karen Rackett. That's a great model I can line up with. John C. Maxwell, married 40 something years, the preeminent leader. How do we know he's the leader? He's created multitude of programs for leadership across the globe and has nothing but success. And then
Yes.
from business, I had a mentor indirectly. So one of my first and biggest mentors was a gentleman named Reginald C. Lewis. He actually created the first leverage buyout in the history of the known world. He actually owned TLC Beatrice Foods. He became a
Mhm.
billionaire, but unfortunately, he passed away from a brain aneurysm at 50. So I learned him from afar and I adopted those goals and those characteristics. Then I was blessed to meet Jim Collins. So I was able to take and learn, and I was an astute reader from Amway. Amway had a book of the month program that they forced us to read business books, psychology books, all of that. And no matter if I spent 10 years and didn't make a dollar, the education they gave me in the real world has enabled me to build systems and build relationships with people and what they call the soft skills. And
Mhm.
that's one of the key things that I was able to line up. So that enabled me to keep moving forward because I had the three advisors and I allowed them to mentor me and actually hold me accountable. In addition to that, having a Proverbs 31 woman to back me.
That's great. I love that you talk about the people around you, and I think the point of having people that either have accomplished more or have accomplished different things, but have those character traits is a key, such a key thing. They've got to have character, right? That's number.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right. So,
Absolutely.
so now I got to tell you. So I'm talking to you. You're in Zanzibar.
Right.
So and we're practically neighbors in Texas. So that's pretty cool.
Isn't that funny? Went around the world to Zanzibar to meet somebody in Sugar Land.
Yeah, right. It's so awesome. I love it. So tell me about Zanzibar. Like, why are you there? What are you doing? And what brought you there?
Well, so in the past 6, 7 years, things have been pretty good. Outside of having, unfortunately, got divorced after 20 years, that will be the only mark that I wish I could redo. But having had, success and a peace. So I've been going around the country on the financial education piece. I'm a paid speaker, just like anybody that's had a little bit of semblance of success. And as I'm going around doing speaking engagements, back in 2018, I'm doing a speaking engagement as a keynote in Atlanta, and I'm sitting down with the person who hired me, and I've met him from the internet, and we had some success together. So we're just talking about, hey, where are some of the places that you traveled to? Where are some places you like to go? So I said, hey, I've been to Fiji, the Bahamas, I've been to Australia, all that good stuff. But where's the place that if money wasn't no issue, you would go? I said, well, there's only two places I want to go because I like island life. I said, I want to go to Zanzibar, and I want to go to what's called Cape Verde because I have lineage that goes back to Cape Verde. So I never thought anything about it. That's like 2018. So we move forward, 2019. I do several events with this person again. And round about December of 2020, I get a phone call. It's about 11:20 at night because I'm a night person. And I get on the phone, it's my buddy. And they say, hey, remember that bucket list trip that we talked about a couple of years ago? I said, well, which one? Said the one to Zanzibar. I said, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, I meant to call you a couple of months ago, but you're busy. I'm busy. I've got a chance to take a bucket list trip to Zanzibar, but here's the problem. It's only two spots left. It's an $800 non-refundable deposit, and the trip is like 3 weeks. And they said, well, only a couple of people I know that own their own business can go any place they want to. So I knew you might be interested. So they send me the link. I say, hey, I'll take both spots for me and my older sister. I pay for the non-refundable, and I'm excited. So I hop on the phone. I call my sister. I call up. I say, hey, Tish. I said, hey, guess what? She said, what? I said, we're going to Zanzibar. She said, we're going to Zanzibar. I said, yeah. I said, I just bought deposit for 2 tickets to go to Zanzibar. I said, you ain't got to pay for nothing, but just get your tips. So she's excited. She's, oh man, I don't know if I can get the time off from my government job. I said, well, you better figure out a way because this non-refundable.
I love
So
it.
after she says that, Warren, then she starts laughing. She has this chuckle. I'm like, what's so funny? She said, you won't believe this, but our family friend RJ, he's in Zanzibar right now. So just like it is, it's here. It's about 10:44 p.m. In Zanzibar time, and I know it's like 2:44 your time.
Yeah.
We hop on WhatsApp. Here's RJ on the beach with some exotic drink in Zanzibar. And I'm like, RJ, what's going on, buddy? He's like, man, I'm having a great time down here. I said, how long you down there on vacation? He said, man, I've been here for like 6 weeks. I said, man, what? And he has a job. I said, well, what job allows you to be there for 6 weeks on vacation? He said, well, really, I'm not here on vacation. I just bought some property in Zanzibar. I said, what? He said, yeah, they got this new law for foreigners. It's called the Homeowners Association Act of 2019. And if you invest a certain amount of dollars, they'll give you residency. So I said, no kidding. You bought some. So I jump on a plane sooner and I fly down to Zanzibar. And RJ introduced me to a developer. And I'm just going there to buy me a condo.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, I'm going to buy a condo, right?
All right, Condo. Yep. I got you.
Right. So we go into the developer's office, Warren, and he has this rendering of these buildings and everything. And I'm like, okay. He said, yeah, we got a condo here and we got a condo there, DJ. But I'm looking at the end of the rendering, and there's these two blanket, plots. And one says, in this, and one that has an X. I said, hey, what is that end plot? He said, oh, that's the building that we're going to start working on, and we're going to probably start selling some units in about 4 or 5 months. I said, I'm just out of curiosity, how much does that building cost? He said, what? I said, out of curiosity, how much does that building cost? So he's like, he's got this flabbergasted look on his face, like, are you kidding me, man? I said, well, I said, out of all seriousness, I said, you don't know me. You know RJ. I said, in reality, I said, I have more resources than RJ. I said, let me share this with you. I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm in the finance business. I said, I'm actually a minority owner in a tequila company called Tolero. I said, pull it up. So he pulls it up, Tolero.com, right? And he sees all the great things about. I said, well, I raised $5 million for that company in 60 days. And I think I could get the price on this building if you tell me what the cost is. So he tells me, oh, the building happens to be about $5 million. I said, guess what? I'll take it. He looks at me, Warren, and he's just like, what? I said, I'll
I'll
take
take
the
it.
building. And that other blank spot, I said, what is that? He said, that's the gym. I said, I'll buy that too. He said, hey man, I don't know much about you and I can't. I said, well, let me ask you this. What do you have to lose? I said, I get back on the plane. You still don't have a unit sold and you don't have the condo because I'm not buying it. So what do you have to lose? I said, so why don't we come to an agreement, shake hands? You send me the information. You don't lose nothing. You have no acquisition cost. It's an
Yep.
upside for you. It's no loss for me if it don't transpire. So he said, okay, I'll sell it to you for your price. I get back home. He sends me the paperwork. My attorneys, my accountants vet it. Boom. I put a deposit down within 30 days. I go back to Zanzibar in March of 2022. We start building on that. I become his partner. And then I learned more about the laws and I realized that I couldn't own the land underneath that development. So guess what I did as an entrepreneur? I hired myself an attorney, hired myself a consultant firm, and I started a corporation in Zanzibar. And I went out and bought more acres of land and I started building businesses. So what you see now, here's the irony of it, is that in 2018, Warren, this is how God is good. Actually, 2017. 2017 was my 50th birthday, and my wife at the time took me to this resort in Playa del Carmen called Hotel Iscarre. This is where you can only thank God for blessings. Serendipitous, real talk here. I'm at this resort. It's the all-inclusive resort, which is nothing new in the world. But this resort, actually all-inclusive means everything: excursions, transportation, airfare, Michelin restaurant, right? It's
Mhm.
only 50% complete, Warren, in 2017. It exceeds my expectations. At the time, I thought my wife was crazy. She spent $6,000 for 1 week. That's a lot of money to us, right?
Yep.
I have the best time of my life. We go back in 2018, Warren, and we stay for 2 weeks. We spend $10,000. Crazy. This resort is three-fourths completed. It's even better. You know this program Cheers, where they always know your name? They put
Yeah.
me back up in the same suite. They take even better care of me. They now say, hey, we got an investment opportunity. If you're an accredited investor, you got $100,000, you can actually buy equity position in this resort. I start filling out the application. I mark the boxes. I have the money. We go through almost 9/10 of the thing. You know, we get to the close and they say, hey, where's your citizenship and your residency? I said, you never told me I had to have that. I said, how did y'all miss that? So I'm now upset. And I said, man,
Yeah.
opportunity. They said, well, hey, you can take another 6, 12 months. I said, I don't have time to do that. You know,
Yeah.
just give me my escrow back and we'll just call it a day. I thought that that was the last thing that, hope deferred. But you know what happened, Warren? God was setting me up for Zanzibar because now I'm doing the exact thing in Zanzibar and this has become a vocation.
Wow.
I've now been here for, it'll be 4 years in December. We started our own corporation here, which allows me to own the land that I have. And we actually have built townhouses. We have a resort. The resort I'm sitting in right here is a 220 unit residential apartment style resort that caters to the fintech business world. It has a Blue Lagoon white sand beach in it, the only one on the entire island, just like Mandalay Bay. And I'm actually going to be building another resort starting in 2026. And it's an all vocation. It's become a calling for me.
Wow.
And
That
so
is
we did our
amazing.
grand opening last January. I did a grand opening in January.
I
And
love
so it's amazing. I would have never thought it in a million years, but all the stuff that my life lessons and ups and downs have led me here. And here's the thing I'm most excited about, Warren, is that we employ close to 40, 50 people who are from Zanzibar. We put them in empowerment. We've actually have gone in business with people here to empower them to actually start their own companies. We actually provide health care every third Friday of the month. We provide free, health clinic checkups for the indigenous people within a 2 mile radius of our destination. We
love it.
also have a K through 8th school, absolutely free for people who stay within 2, 3 mile destination. And with the University of Texas at Austin, my son just graduated there this past May. The African American department head, Dr. Leonard Moore, he's going to come here and we're going to work on talking about building an abroad program here in the next 2 to 3 years. So I'm literally building an entire ecosystem, Warren, that's becoming my life legacy.
That is amazing. Wow. That's so cool. And yeah, God's timing is definitely not our timing. And his vision is way bigger than our vision, that's for sure.
Isn't it true? He laughs at our goals and our dreams, and then he gives us stuff like this. You couldn't have told me in a million plus years I would have laughed you out of the planet if you told me I would be in Zanzibar one alone, yet alone here spending 3 4 months building stuff that is actually you couldn't have told me that.
No, isn't that funny how we limit our thinking? And I mean, we're around people all the time that just tell us, well, that's not going to be possible, and that's not feasible, and that's not going to happen, and you're too old or whatever, right? Any excuse. You can't do that. You're not from there, right? Like any kind of excuse you want, you come up with on reasons why this would never work. And so I think like this is like full circle, seeing you entrepreneur, starting with, starting with little business to bigger business to then reinventing yourself and doing another business to now this, and kind of following the path, I guess, and following your passion. I think that's like, I mean, that to me is kind of a big takeaway. Trust it, follow your passion, know you're going to have to work hard, and surround yourself with great people.
Oh man, you couldn't said it better. And I'll tell you, we'll end it this way. I don't believe in coincidences. Your company that connected you and I together actually found my bio on LinkedIn. I hardly do anything on LinkedIn. That's what's so funny. So I happened to get a notification from somebody named Abigail. Hey, we saw your bio. I'm like, you saw my bio? Where? On LinkedIn? I haven't changed that thing in 15 years. This is real talk. So I go check her out because I'm like, okay, is this legit? You talking about you found me on LinkedIn?
What is
So,
that? Yeah.
and as I said, when you and I met, I thought you were in the UK because all her stuff was UK, and you said you in Sugarland. I said Sugarland, UK, and you were like, no, Sugarland, Texas. What?
Yeah, that's hilarious. We have somebody from Zanzibar, a UK person collect somebody from Zanzibar to a person in Sugarland, and then we make the full circle. Like we've been all the way around the whole globe in this call.
Went 10,000 miles away to meet you, and we right down the street from each other.
That is awesome. Well, I love your story. It's so inspirational, and like it just shows like this is the kind of thing. It's like, hey, folks, you're out there, you want to go get it. You know, work hard, market smart. Make sure you got a customer acquisition cost that is reasonable. Surround yourself with great people. Like grind, grind, and wait for those opportunities, and then grab them when you get them.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, let me leave your organization with two thoughts.
Oh,
Okay.
please.
So we have a mantra. It's called the Pom Pom Lifestyle. That's plenty of money, peace of mind. Emphasis on peace. I realize that at this point in stage, it's not about things, it's not about money, it's about true peace and having your family with you. So I'm here right now. I have my two young daughters with me, and I'm having the best time of my life to have my 12 and my 6-year-old daughter to see all this stuff and just have a new experience. So that peace is priceless. Okay. So I've been saying pom pom lifestyle for 20 years, but this is really what it's all about, having the ability to just do what you want, not be confined by borders of finance. And when I mean finance, if you only make, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a year and you're consumer debt free, you can still have peace. And that's what I really, really learned. So the second thing that I would like to share with your community is from a work ethic standpoint, because nothing comes without any work. God can't, steer a parked car. And faith without works is zero, right? So I have a thing called the 4x4, Warren. I like to lead with your community. So the
Yeah.
first one I call it the 430 dirty little words. Number one, discipline. If you don't discipline yourself, somebody will. So as you heard my story, I've been disciplined several times for being a knucklehead. But I had to
Mm.
go through that. I wouldn't change a thing about it, Warren, because it made me who I am today. Okay. Number two, accountability. You have to have the ability to be accountable to somebody higher than you. I believe in God the Almighty, but I also found men and women of character that I allow them to discipline me and hold me accountable because I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. The third one is having the ability to plug into a successful system. So if you can't create one yourself, emulate one, be it franchises like you guys have done or corporate. That is the key to success is systems. You can't be successful without a duplicatable system. And it took me a long time to figure out how that works. And thank God I got it. So then the last one of the four dirty little words is the work, baby. Here's what I tell people, Warren. You can't do it 2 to 5 days. You can't do it 2 to 5 weeks. You can't do it 2 to 5 months. You got to put your head down and go get it 2 to 5 years without no complaints, not counting what real success is, but doing the work. That's what corporate American system teach you. So then the fourth one is what I call the soft people skills to put you in the CEO suite. I call it the 4 Ps. Number one, professionalism. It's a shame we have to tell what professionalism is, Warren, but here's my definition. Professionalism, speak the king's English. I don't mean grammatically. I mean, if I'm in the real estate business, talk about development, talk about projects. If I'm an educator, talk about syllabus, talk about midterms, talk about final exams, SATs. That's the king's English.
Mhm.
Professionalism. If this meeting with you started at 2 p.m. Central, I should be ready at 1:45 and we should
Mhm.
go at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
Professionalism. Wear the right attire. You and I are casual, so I'm wearing the right attire. But in all seriousness, if it required me to wear a suit when I meet government officials here, I wear the proper attire. I don't even negotiate that. That's professionalism, okay? So the second P is persistence. Persistently follow your plan without ever negotiating the success or the work that you have to go through. The
Mhm.
third P is perseverance. This is how you can only become an entrepreneur. This is a contact sport, ladies and gentlemen. It got a lot of downs. Robert Kiyosaki said, he said, if there's a vase, it has 1,000 marbles in it, Warren, and one marble is blue, because I like blue. He said, you can miss 999 times, but you get that blue marble in the 100th time, it's worth $1 million to you. So just keep working. Perseverance. You asked me what was the gut check? When I lost, getting kicked out of college, wanted to be a baseball player, that was a gut check. But I
Mhm.
put on my big boy pants and accountable because I was responsible for being a failure in that regard.
Mhm.
Same thing. And then the last thing is when you have the performance, here's the difference between a professional, an all-star, and Michael Jordan. Professionals, they got all the 10,000 hours to make it happen in a professional environment. The all-star, Warren, they show up and make things happen most of the time. And when the lights are the brightest, the Michael Jordans of the world, they make the shots when everybody are coming against them and everybody know they're getting the ball. So those
Mhm.
are the 4 Ps. Four dirty little words: discipline, accountability, plug into a proven system of success, put the work in, professionalism, persistence, perseverance, and performance. And if you can do that with a good spirit, with a good team of advisors, there's nothing that you can't accomplish on this planet.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm all pumped up. Let's go run through some walls. That's awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've learned a lot. And I hope I hope to see you back on the other side of the world here in a little while.
Absolutely. Hey, and if I can let them know how to get in touch with me, I appreciate it. If they want to get in touch with me, Warren, they can actually reach me at djthemoneycoach.com. That's my website, djthemoneycoach.com. They can reach me on IG at djthemoneycoach. And they actually, if they want to, they can still reach me in the analog world, 1-800-186-395-3042, 1-866-395-3042. And believe it or not, Warren, I've had that number for 20 years.
That's
It's open
amazing.
24/7, 365. And if they want to come to Zanzibar, all they have to do is go to escape2zanzibar.com. Escape2zanzibar.com. And on IG, it's go escape2zanzibar.com. And we're doing a special for your community, Warren. I said I got to do something special for you. So I'm going to give your community a 7-day, 6-night trip minus airfare for only $999.
Wow.
$999, and they can do it in 3 installments, Warren. And I think my CIO sent you the link, and that's to say thank you for giving us a chance to be on your amazing platform.
Well, that sounds awesome. Well, maybe I'll just meet you in Zanzibar, screw Sugarland. Let's go there.
I got a couple of sweets waiting for you, some cold ones.
I love it. I love it. DJ the Money Coach, you are a stud, man, and I just wish you the best. Thank you for sharing all the wisdom too. Sincerely, it was really really great.
I appreciate it. It's been nothing but an honor and a privilege to be on your platform, Warren. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.